palpitations. Well, I've got air in my lungs. I'm gonna get me some. Keep on rolling in my sweet illumination, dancing with no complication. I'm gonna lose my mind. Jagged little heart, wide open the stars, all your broken parts are part of your life. Love the way you are beating with the sky. All your broken parts are perfectly fine. Oh, my little jagged little.
We could make a blood oath and promise to be true. Every being has its weakness, mine will eternally be you. In another eon, in another lifetime, but it would be right now if we were just vampires, if we were immortal. We never say goodbye, but the only way I'd be with you is if we both became creatures of the night.
What are you singing for us today?
It's an original. It's called I Could Be.
Do you have a more popular song prepared?
No.
Have you ever been in a musical production before?
No.
The whole creepy silent mime gimmick, I mean, it's very effective, and the blood is a nice touch also. Yeah. I can't give you anything. No, I'm sorry. Really, no candy for grown-ups. Come on.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me. I'm so used to just doing my spiel that I normally do for fun table sessions, which is what this is tonight. It's the first time I'm doing this in 2022. I normally don't do these things, but I'm so used to just saying the same types of things. But welcome if you're watching this live with us, and if you're going to be watching this down the road. I've been trying to get one of these sessions back together this entire year, and in some ways, because people's schedules have been so filled with artistic endeavors and things they've been doing, including my own, it's been really difficult to get 3 people together. And tonight we actually have 4, which is amazing. And so I'm really happy and glad to finally get one together, because these were a lot of fun. It was bringing 4 artistic people together. Sometimes they had a certain theme to them. Sometimes they had 0 theme to them. I can let you know tonight that we'll be going about an hour because people do have commitments and other things that they're taking care of. So we'll try to go till so it's 6:09 here on the West Coast. So we have about 7:10 or so at the latest. And so the 3-hour, 4-hour marathons, this one will not be that. So if you have a question in the chat, please get it in there within that hour so that I can ask the guests. Otherwise, we're just going to start randomly talking about certain things. I have something that I would like to start with. And I know I have something I want to end with. But in between, I don't know where these things go. Sometimes I become a fly on the wall and I don't really say much of anything because the guests are asking each other questions about what they do and all that kind of thing. And sometimes they ask me questions and put me on the spot, which is perfectly fine. Whatever you're kind of into. So let's get to the guests. So I'm going to introduce them one at a time. And I always do such a bad job of this because I don't have it in my head of like how I want to start. So let me start with the most recent, and I'll work my way back. So the most recent one-on-one interview I did with this guest was like a week and a half ago. It wasn't that long ago. As you saw in the last clip, she is one of the cast members from the hit horror film Terrifier 2. She is a writer, actor, producer, director, definitely a writer because I was reading her blog entries and we talked about that, and also an activist and so a world traveler as well. So please welcome Casey Hartnett.
Hi.
Hi, Casey. So good to have you back so soon. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. This is great.
Yeah, I had so much fun talking with you recently that yeah, I'm glad you can get a chance to meet some of the other folks that I've had a chance to interview and just kind of shoot the breeze about stuff.
Of course. I'm excited.
Okay, cool. So let's bring in guest number 2, which hopefully we got the connection issue worked out, and I think she's smiling about it. So hopefully it worked. I've interviewed her twice. Recently was last month. She has put out a really tremendous CD, which is this. Which is, we're actually going to be talking about this. So this is what I'm going to be starting with. It's also on my wall over here. And she's also an amazing actress as well. And I know she directs, and she's got her hands on all kinds of different artistic endeavors as well. So let's welcome Kelly Dowdle, hopefully.
Hi.
Hey, can you hear us?
I made it. I can hear you.
Okay, cool. How are you, Kelly?
I'm well. I'm so happy to see the CDs on your wall. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, and it's in my player right now. So
Yes.
yeah. And I'll be honest with you, it hasn't left since it showed up. So it's been in there in constant rotation.
I so appreciate that. That makes me so happy. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Kelly, meet Casey above you, and Casey, meet Kelly.
Hi, Casey. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Yeah. So let's bring in the third guest. And I messaged her about this when I figured it out. Her one-on-one interview was exactly a year ago today. Which was just crazy that it was on December 7th last year. She was an amazing songwriter, and I don't know how many songs she's probably written since the last time we talked, because at that point it was, I think, in the hundreds, if I'm not wrong. And she is just incredibly talented. I've got a great sense of humor, and she's also on the East Coast. So we're going to bring in Dalby Biehl.
Hi.
Hi, Dalby.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Really quick, just since I mentioned that in your intro, how many songs have you written off the top of your head recently?
Over 300 now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, it's really brain's busy.
Well, you've got a songwriter next to you, and Kelly, and I know Casey loves music.
Yep.
Cool. And Kelly, are you back on the East Coast now?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here. I'm leaving for Nashville super early in the morning.
Ooh.
But I'm here. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear more about your writing. It's so cool.
Yeah, me too. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Dalby's down in Georgia.
Oh. But right now you're in Georgia.
Yeah, that's where I live. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, oh yeah, you're East Coast. Okay. I was like, wait, she's not. I don't. For some reason, I hear East Coast, and I'm clearly in my own little world. I always think it's New York. So.
Okay, and last but definitely not least, this guest has done these fun table sessions before. She is. We saw a clip from her short film Trill during the intro. And so she's a filmmaker, set designer. She's a musician. Her band Paper Nova's on the t-shirt back here on the wall. She's been doing all kinds of things. And I also know her personally. She lives here in Seattle, so I do know her in person. So she's one of the most artistic people that I know in my circle in person. And so let's welcome to this fun table session, Christy Anna Wu.
Hey everyone.
Hey Christy Anna, how are you?
Good, doing great. Thanks for having me, and wonderful to meet you all.
You too.
Yeah, cool. So to kind of get things started, just to throw it out there, I've kind of mentioned to all of you when I was inviting you about that clearly I've got 4 extremely talented artists here, but that are also identifying as female. And if you look through the history of what I've done with my one-on-ones and also my other fun tables, that's not by accident. I've had a lot of folks that identify as female on purpose, because I feel that I'm a supporter of women in music, women in the arts. And it's kind of like, well, if you say that, where is it? So I try to do that, but I also love talking to all of you when we did our one-on-ones. So I wanted to start off with something that's kind of serious. And then after that, we'll just kind of go over, and feel free to ask each other questions. You don't have, it doesn't have to be coming from me. A lot of times I just disappear into the mist during these things, and you guys start asking each other questions. But what I wanted to start with was on the inside of Kelly's CD, and put this up here again. She has something written, so I want to read this to all of you, and then see if there's something that either resonates with you or something that you could speak to, and we'll kind of go from there. And again, if you're watching this live, because I see there's some people that are, if you have a if you have a question, just go ahead and put it in the chat to YouTube or Twitch, and I'll try to work it into the conversation. So this is what it says. This album is dedicated to all the women who came before me that couldn't use their voices. To our ancestors who paved the way and didn't get to finish what they started, I will carry them home. To all the women with scars, you are warriors and my heroes. Our wounds turn to scars. You are beautiful. Anyone? Something resonate with you? Do you feel you have your own scars? Know somebody else in your circle that has scars? What comes to mind when you hear that?
Well,
It's a lot. It's a lot in one little section.
Yeah. This could go. I think I love that. That's really beautiful. I love that you wrote that. Was your album sort of inspired by that feeling and that thought process of just identifying and just representing women and something like that? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, we all have like trauma and trials and tribulations, right? We've all gone through stuff. I've been thinking more lately, like more now than ever lately, about how like we're all just human and pain is just such a constant element to life. And I think when I started writing this album, it was very much like stepping into my womanhood and like really owning who I am. And then also cherishing, like I lost my grandmother 2 years ago. And there was a path that she definitely took. Same with my great grandmother, which was their path, chosen path, and I respect it. But I think there was a lot of conditioning that happened when they were young to be a certain way, do a certain thing. You cook, you clean, you feed the kids, you please your husband, and then you shut the fuck up and you don't do anything else. And I think for me, the past, especially 5 years, more so 10, have been kind of that emancipation and like freeing of that thought process. And in that has been a lot of healing and recovery, I think, from like residual passed down trauma in my family. But however you want to call it, I use the word trauma. But the moral of the story is I believe that doesn't have to be the way anymore. And women are so powerful and we wear so many hats already and we're so resilient. And for me, this album was just about like, I want to carry those voices home, meaning I want to bring in, honor all of the women that didn't get to finish or even begin, to have the courage and the strength, and the permission, giving themselves permission to be who they really wanted to be. And so it was kind of a culmination of me stepping into my own confidence, but also honoring the path that kind of they didn't choose in a weird way, and making sure that I do everything I can to be different, even though I respect and honor their process. Like, I don't necessarily want to raise my kids that way and be that. I think we can be a lot of different things. So yeah, this album was kind of all about like, I am woman, hear me roar, and I'm going to do it my way. And which is funny because now that I'm done with that album, I'm like writing in a totally different direction now, which is funny. I'm sure you can relate to that, Dalby. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really love that. I'm only 16, so I haven't been through all this stuff. But I've grown up in a family of really strong women, and I think that's really important. Like, my dad is a stay-at-home dad. My mom works in corporate. She worked up from food stamps and being on very poor, and she's worked her way up, and she's always been a really strong example. And my aunt was killed in South Africa in 1993 fighting for social justice. And so my grandmother has always been a super strong presence in my life. And I think just the strong females that I have in my life have shaped me into really just appreciating being a female, which is hard sometimes because, in a world of patriarchy and all that, it's difficult to, accept it, but, you just have to keep working forward. And I think what you said is really beautiful, and I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
and to be soft, right? Like
Yeah.
it's such a balance. Like I was gonna actually ask Christy and Casey too, like, isn't it so hard to be, it's like we have to be resilient and strong and fight for what we want and use our voices and all of this, but at the same time, like on the inside, I actually just posted the other day, like I'm really tired of being super strong and resilient and what could be perceived as a bitch, like just because I'm strong and outspoken, I'm a bitch, you know? But it's like I just want to be this like cuddle of gentleness, but it's really hard to do that in today's society. Like you gotta kick ass as a woman, and it's the duality of those two things is really hard for me to balance, but I'm beginning to understand it a bit more. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I mean that is such a conflict, I feel like, for a lot of women is you know, you're supposed to be one thing, you know, sweet and just very, I mean, I think women are just naturally very nurturing in general, but also, I mean, with that comes, you know, this other like, but at the same time, women have all these like ambitions and passions, and they're, you know, they want to be out in the world doing everything. So, I mean, and I do think that I have noticed even in Terrifier too, in the film I was just in, a lot of people have reacted to the mother character. I don't know if you've all seen the movie, but the mother character is going through, she's grieving, she's kind of going through a hard time, and she's really hard on her kids. And a lot of people have said she's kind of a bitch. And that perception of her is, it's kind of unfortunate, I think, because I do think that her character is, she's going through a lot and she's grieving and but at the same time she's yelling at her kids, and people are saying that that's, you know, not great, that's not good, and she's not, you know, whatever, but they're criticizing her character for that. But and then there are the people who are like, this was such a great portrayal of a struggling mother. So you're going to get both sides of that as a woman, you know, no matter what. Yeah. I don't know.
And we are those things. We are both sides of that. Like I'm not afraid to, if someone calls me a bitch now, I'm like, it's kind of awesome actually. It means I'm creating traction. I'm doing something worthy of being talked about, you know? So yeah, I think it's definitely okay to be both.
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would agree.
Christy Anna, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you and I have had discussions about how you've really shifted yourself into being more vocal about things that you believe in and things that you don't feel are perhaps the right construction in the arts and in just in society in general. Is anything that you wanted to add? No pressure.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, definitely was, you know, in the nurturing environment that I was around, or aside from that, you know, definitely told very much to, you know, just to kind of ignore the situations, just say yes, just kind of be agreeable, you know, and don't stir the pot, don't create any waves, just, you know, work hard and be nice and you'll do fine. And clearly that doesn't really work because you have to set boundaries for yourself. So it took me a really long time, you know, growing up and kind of navigating my way through the arts and through my career to kind of like really find my voice. And it's like very, very small steps too. Like sometimes, you know, when I would think that I was actually defending myself or speaking up, like looking back in hindsight, it wasn't nearly enough. You know, it was still really nice. And so I also had the other opposite issue of, you know, aside from taking a really small step, you know, really overthinking what I was going to say or what I was going to do, sometimes I would just like let it all boil up and then I would blow up, you know? So from being really nice to like being just kind of this explosive type of, you know, personality, and then trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, what was the consequence of that? You know, did I lose my dignity there? Like what, you know, how can I like recover from that? And so over time, I think I've learned how to kind of navigate the back and forth between like being kind, I guess, or being, you know, being kind, but also being assertive, or trying to maybe going a little bit past that too. I guess it's been definitely a journey. And I think what has been hard for me has been sometimes not necessarily having certain role models, you know, to like maybe identify with or to look up to. And so that's been something that I've been working on recently too, in the last, you know, few years. It's like, you know, who can I, you know, look up to, and how, you know, let's collaborate with more artists, and let's like explore, and let's expand like the horizons a little bit, expand my bubble a little bit, and just kind of learn, keep growing, being better, not bitter.
Yes.
Yeah, I really relate to that, because, you know, growing up right now in high school, it's a difficult time. And it's kind of frustrating, because I've known who I am for a long time, and I think I've really been able to express that through art. And I've really been in love with music ever since I was little, and so that's really helped me express my emotions. And unfortunately, a lot of high school girls don't know where they can find that balance, basically. And it's really sad, because a lot of girls don't have role models, or they have people they look up to, but they don't know how to replicate that without being a copycat or being called a fake, or, you know, that sort of thing. And I just think identity growing up is really difficult to find. And that's what I've been focusing on, trying to balance everything: friends, school, career, all that stuff. And I really like how you said that, because I can really, really relate to that right now.
Yeah, that's so real. I mean, I will say I didn't really feel like I fell into place until I moved to New York. Once I moved, I'm from Chicago. I went to college in Iowa, and then had a great time. But when I moved, there was something always, like throughout my childhood, growing up, always, where I felt like slightly different. Like, and I was like, I'm not different. Like, I'm so normal. But also there was something that I wasn't allowing myself, because I didn't know it existed in the world. And then when I moved to New York, and I moved there for an acting school, but at the same time, I started just creating little videos and with some friends, and we made this web series called Period Drama. And it's about women in different, it's a comedy, sketch comedy thing about women in different time periods having their periods. And so we just thought, I was just like, that's hilarious. Let's make this. And some people were like, that's kind of gross. And we're like, it's funny. If you can't find the humor in that, what's wrong with you? No, but, and then we got connected to this organization called #HappyPeriod, who does, and that organization does donation drives and, you know, works with the homeless and providing menstrual products for the homeless. And so I connected with the founder, Chelsea Von Chaz, and we did a drive for our series. We did and then I just stayed in touch with her. She's based in LA, so I stayed in touch and started just facilitating all of the donation drives in New York. And once I started doing that work, I was like, I moved to New York to become an actor, because this is what I grew up wanting to do. And then this whole new, because I didn't grow up with like around activists, I didn't grow up around that. And then when I finally started doing that work, it's just like this light bulb went off. And I was like, this fell on my lap, and nothing has ever felt more right at the same time.
That's amazing.
So
That's so cool.
it was, yeah, and it was amazing. And it's one of the things I hold closest to my heart, and it's one of my favorite experiences that I've had, and discoveries about myself that I've had so far. And it's so real hearing, like when I was in high school, I was like, there's something missing and I don't know what it is. And I
Yeah.
remember feeling that way. Absolutely. So the fact that you said that, it just made me remember that. Absolutely.
I had a similar experience in high school and like junior high and growing up. I was laughing the other day because I was like, oh, no wonder I became an actor, or I'm now acting and singing, because all I wanted as a child was to be heard and seen. And so I always laugh now. I'm like, oh, got it. Okay, like it's so obvious now. Like I went into the arts because it's like it stemmed originally from such a place of like repression, like within myself. But now I've transitioned. New York has been such an amazing place to like really get your backbone and your grounding and really realize who you are. So I can relate to that, Casey. It's very, very true.
Yeah, for me, my New York in that sense is LA. I've been to LA 4 times this year, just recording and writing, and it's been really amazing because I didn't go to LA before the beginning of this year, and going back every time, I'm just more excited every time because I get to focus on what I love rather than doing school and all that stuff, because that's not what I want to do with my life. And it feels very purposeful when I'm doing something that I love and I want to keep doing for the rest of my life. And so it's great to hear that other people feel the same way about like finding a place that they feel like belonging in, because like I always am like, is this normal? Like, is this weird? Like that I love this place so much. So yeah.
Dalby, I want to interject something real quick. Have you found some of the same, if it's criticism or people trying to steer you the wrong way because of your age? Like there's like, oh, you don't know what you want. You don't know that you want to be a musician for your career. And that could be coming from, any walk of people. I'm just kind of curious if that's also been something you've had to deal with.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially being a teenage girl. That's part of it. But you know what's funny? I feel like I face more criticism from outsiders of the music industry or the entertainment industry rather than people that are working with me and like witnessing what I'm doing, because I work with Tricky Stewart. He just did Beyonce's new single "Break My Soul," and he's Grammy nominated, all these things, and I've been in the studio with him multiple times, and he's just like, you are so talented. And he asked me every time I see him, he's like, why have you not dropped out of school yet? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, see, if everyone thought like this, I would feel much more supported and confident in myself. Even though I am, because obviously hearing his approval is like, oh, a million times better than hearing everyone else saying like, oh, you're just a kid, like you don't know what you're doing. But just experiences like that, that's why LA is so helpful, because everyone that I work with and everyone that watches me perform, they're like, oh, this is real. Like you can actually do this. But yeah, definitely when I was starting out, when I was 11 and 12, people were like, okay, but what's your plan B? Like, there's a lot of girls that want to do this. And I'm like, no, like this is what I want to do. So yeah, that is definitely something that I've faced, and I'm sure you all have as well.
Dalby, the one thing I would say as like somebody that's in their 30s now, I wish that I would have remembered or known this at 16, but there's like, I brought it up earlier, but there's such beauty, and you already know this, so I'm just reflecting back to you, like kind of what you already said, but there's like so much power in duality and the dichotomy of living in two worlds. So like we were talking about, Mark, the last time I was on, how a lot of people will say, if you had to pick acting or singing, or, pick a lane, like we're taught as children, like if you want to be a doctor, you got to go to med school and that's all you're going to do. And I would tell you, like, you can finish school and record and write and go to an acting class and do it all. And it's just like, the notion of having to pick one lane or quit something so you can do something else is like such bullshit. It's just like so stupid.
Yeah. I think that is so true. I'm in business classes in high school because I want to make sure that I don't get screwed over, especially, people like to screw over little girls.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always, I have a great manager and that's great, but I do love being involved in the business side and the fashion side and modeling. All that stuff is very interesting to me as well, just from an expression standpoint. But I do really like that everyone else sees that as well, because it's so silly to me that people are just like, you have to have a plan B, or like you have to do just one thing. Like it doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's very helpful to know that you hear that, see that.
Cool.
Yeah, when all of you are talking, and I'm not trying to put the, I don't know, the male perspective, or whatever you want to call it, but I'm kind of curious too, for myself, and I've talked about this on my live streams and definitely some fun table sessions, that I can kind of go back to a period in my life where it really kind of put me on a certain path towards the arts. And it was definitely when I was bullied. And I can think back to that. I'm 52 now, I'm an old fucker. But I can still remember exactly how it felt those days back in 6th grade. And it went on for months. And I'm kind of curious, did anybody else experience anything like that? And it didn't have to be that you were bullied, but something else that was really profoundly impacted you in your younger life that set you on this path that eventually turned you to what you are now?
Heck yeah. Yeah, I think we all have. I mean, I touched on it earlier a little bit, but yeah, I mean, just completely broken home, older brother, like boys were scared to talk to me, and I was like the ugly duckling until like 13 or 14, and then I got like a national modeling contract, and then my entire life changed, and then all of a sudden I was like quote unquote pretty, and it was so weird for me, and I was like bullied by my brother's friends. It was all so weird. My dad left when we were young, so that was like super painful, left a lot of wounds like on my heart, and then just trying to like figure all of that out. So yeah, I very much, I mean, again, I think I'm in the arts now because it's you know, you really have to be grounded and centered on who you are in order to embark on this journey in entertainment. You know, you gotta have the thickest skin and be very certain about what you're doing. So there's a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely I do a lot. I've done a lot of things sometimes out of spite because, you know, in the past, like I think I would say that it's been you know, kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts, you know, sometimes. And to Kelly's point about like duality and you know, dichotomies, like every single time someone's like just takes a little cut at you, then I feel very spiteful, and then I think, what can I do? You know, that's like 10 times way out there and better, and probably not the most healthy way of addressing my insecurities, but but like, for example, like for example, there was one person in time, long time ago, you know, very much an acquaintance, haven't talked to this person in like decades, right? And I remember there was something super petty going on. And at the time, I wasn't actively super involved in music. I joined a choir, had grown up playing classical piano, but I wasn't like a performer. And so I remember having this conversation, or just like a very petty kind of argument with this person. And this person told me, "You're never going to be successful. You know, you're never going to get you're never going to be heard. You know, your music's not going to go anywhere." And so like, that's like just one instance over many instances where someone just like will cut at you with their words. And then I've learned over time that even though words definitely hurt, and they can definitely, you know, cause changes and profound changes, like, you know, in the world and our government and all that. Sometimes like those certain people, they will just say those things and not back it up with their own actions. So they can go and then flounder, you know, maybe they were aspiring in some sort of artistic way, but actually never really followed through with it because they were just so dealing with their own stuff. And so I think that the way that I've kind of like veered more into the arts realm is almost like a reverse psychology. And I'll give one more example. There was one time where I was had worked on some sort of graphic design, presented it, and I was like, oh, this was really fun to work on because it's creative. I got to use like more of my right brain, you know, right brain, left brain stuff. And then the person told me, you should use more of your left brain. You should focus on the analytics. And I'm like, and that just, just destroys you. You just want 30 seconds of like, yay, I did this. And then that's kind of ripped away a little bit. So it's a lot of spite, but also that's been growing more into like, hey, I might be spiteful now, but I want to make sure that I can kind of pave the way for others and, try to do stuff that might resonate with others too.
I love
Don't
that.
don't you feel like when somebody says something like that, I used to get so angry, and I still get super triggered. I mean, people can just crush me with their words for sure. But I also now at the end of the day, I'm like, thank you.
Mhm.
Because you actually are the one that's just keeping my fire burning. And like, it's not even out of spite. It's just like, I know that these people are it's almost like they're put into our lives to just make sure and remind us that we're on the right track,
Mhm.
So I definitely can relate to that. I'm always, at the end of the day, people that are ugly like that, I always just say thank you, because you're actually serving me by keeping me motivated,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I had a similar experience of myself. I'm like, of course. But I mean, when I was a kid, I started out, my parents put me in dance classes when I was 3. And then, so I grew up as a dancer. I just stuck with it and always wanted to add more dances. And I started competing eventually. But there is something that I was always writing. I was always writing scripts. I was always like making my friends come over and put on plays. There is something in me that was like, but there's this, I want to do theater. I want to be in that movie that I love. I want to like be like that character in that movie I love. And I loved Harriet the Spy, and she's a writer. And so I think when I was introduced to that movie when I was 5, I said I wanted to be an actor, and I never really looked back. And that's what I wanted to do. But I was also dancing 6 days a week. And then I started doing theater when I was like 11. And I remember all my dance teachers, whenever I said I was like, yeah, I also want to act. And I'm very soft-spoken, kind of reserved sometimes. And they'd be like, well, you're going to need to speak up. And I'm like, I know I'm not like talking loud right now because you're right in front of me. Like, I'll be fine. But like, they would always comment on like, you got to be bigger, you got to be louder. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, but I'm like, okay, do you know what you're talking about? And when I started doing theater, it was when I was 16, I got cast in this play that caused me to miss quite a few dance classes. And I had recently stopped competing. And I just remember my dance teacher looking at me and being like, first, when I said I wanted to be an actor, she was like, good luck. And I was like, thank you. Thank you so much. And then she, when I started doing this play, when I got cast in this play, I had to miss classes, and she just sat there. I told her, I went up to her in class, and I was so scared because she was really intimidating. And I went up to her, I was like, I booked this play, I have to do it. Like, they cast me in the lead in this play, and I need to go. And so I'm going to have to miss some classes, but I know the dance. I'm going to, blah, blah, blah. She's just looked at me smiling. She's like, okay, okay. And then suddenly I get this email from her saying that she had kicked me out of the ballet dance, like an email. And I was like, I know the dance. But it was just one of those things that was kind of it for me. And I was like, I'm not trying to be a professional dancer, but I know that there's this other thing in me. And she pushed me in that direction for being, not so nice to me in that way. And I find that really interesting. When that moment is so vivid in my mind, when that moment and the moment I quit dance is so vivid in my mind. I remember being at home and having that conversation with my mom after she like emailed my mom. My mom's like, this is stupid. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the opposite in the way that I moved around a lot when I was little. Like when I was born in California. When I was 3, I moved to Pennsylvania. When I was 6, I moved to New Jersey. When I was 8, I moved to Georgia. And so basically I had to learn to be confident and to be like talking to everyone all the time. And when I got to middle school, when I joined chorus, and elementary school when I did theater and stuff, I would always get the lead or a solo or something, and people would be very rude about it. And, you know, they wouldn't say anything to my face, but they would say, you know, behind my back, like, she doesn't deserve this. She doesn't work hard enough. Like, she's not going to do well or whatever. And it would always make me laugh because I was like, I work as hard as anyone. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, it just feels like motivation for me to work harder. And I've always felt that. And so it's never really gotten to me in a way that it makes me angry, but it gets me into a way where it's like, okay, so now I have to show that I'm working harder. Now I have to prove to everyone else that I am working as hard, if not harder than them. And that's kind of where like my outspokenness has gotten me in that sort of realm of competitiveness, I guess.
Can we talk about how competitive this world is and how counterproductive it is to try to convince someone to not do something or to not be successful in any way? Because, I mean, that goes with, and I feel like that goes with everything. That goes with every sort of equality that is trying to be achieved in this world, because there's someone else who is like, no, you shouldn't. I don't want you doing that. Yeah. Oh, I'm like echo. You're hearing. Okay. Anyway, it goes with everything. And I mean, like Gloria Steinem said, you know, we are linked, not ranked. We can only succeed and make this world more better if we're raising each other up and allowing each other to pursue the things that we want to pursue. So, and be successful. So, yeah, I don't know if that resonates, but I feel like with women as well, like women are known for, or like said to be so like catty towards one another and more competitive towards one another. And it's just not, I mean, I know a lot of women who are very supportive, which I'm very grateful for, but I do know that it exists, you know, that people are not always as supportive, but it's just unfortunate, and it's not helpful.
I've actually experienced my experience thus far in both TV and film and music. And again, I have some amazing female mentors that are extraordinary women that are all the things. But I have had way more issues with women than I have men in the industry. And it's been very disheartening and very alarming. Like to the point where I'm now on a mission to make that one of my sole purposes, like within the industry, to really build and mentor younger women and to bring other women up. But it's been appalling. Like I just the other day I had a very well-known photographer in her 70s take me on this ride of like just challenging and very competitive and jealousy. I'm like, I'm 45 years younger than you. I don't know what you want me to do. I look up to you, like, bow down. I don't know. It's so weird to me. How much, actually also how much, maybe I've been lucky. And of course there's tons of male misogynistic pigs out there and the whole thing, but I've really had a lot more respect and like regard from men than I have women in the industry. It's been really crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is from just the competitive nature that women have had to like feel, because, you know, if you're not pretty enough, if you're not talented enough, if you're not, you know, obviously like everything, if you don't meet the exact expectations of a pop star or a female musician, you're not going to make it. And that's how it's been for so long. And I think that's like the general nature of females, and especially the entertainment industry. Like that's why it's so competitive. And I agree with you. From my experience, I've worked with men for the most part that have been super, super respectful. And obviously a lot of it might be because of my age, because 16. But you know, like they're so respectful, and they always hear out ideas and stuff. But working with females, it feels way more competitive because you're marketing yourself the same way. You're trying to fulfill the same brand and all that stuff. And I think that's where the lines get a little blurry between like friendship and between competition, which I think is really interesting that you pointed that out.
Yeah, a lot can change for sure.
It's really interesting. I'm thinking about so much of what all of you have said so far, and some of it that comes to mind too is, Kelly, you had mentioned earlier about, at some point you'd like to not have to fight. You'd like to just be and kind of have people see you that way. I can definitely say as an Asian American man that I feel in a different way. Sometimes I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the representation. I'm tired of having to explain myself, or people have expectations of what I'm supposed to be, especially after 2020, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of good things came from that, but a lot of horrible things also came from that as well, for many different reasons. And it's like, you know what? I just want to watch the show, or I want to do my live stream and have you take me for what I am, not say and put all these expectations on me. And it comes from all different sets, including the Japanese American community. They put stuff on me. And
Mark, it's wild. Sorry to interrupt you. It's wild you say that, because I actually think men have it as hard, if not harder, because there's so much pressure. Like, you got to be the breadwinner, and you got to suck up your feelings and just keep your head down and keep working. And you're taught as little boys, like, don't feel, work your ass off, stay in your lane, shut up, So I definitely hear you on that. That's a really good point. I always kind of forget that men have these struggles too.
And it goes back to what Casey was saying. I mean, trying to have equality in any area is so hard because people are always, there's a naysayer somewhere. But I go back to some of the local media here, some of the wonderful concert photographers, male and female, and some non-binary as well, who one of them was telling Mark, I'm starting to get hate now. That means I must be doing something right. And so, you know what? I'm starting to get these DMs too that I was never getting before from people. And I'm kind of like, what the hell is this? And I don't think I'm doing something wrong. And then it really does make me check myself. And to your point from various guests here, initially it was something that kind of motivated me. It's like, yeah, thank you for saying that, because I'm just going to work that much harder. But then it became more of, I'm going to work harder for myself. It kind of transitioned over, and Christy Anna, you were talking about spite. I can definitely relate to that early on when I started Eclectic Arts, because, and you know about this, and I won't take up too much time because it's about the guests, it's not about me. But there was a local film festival that I will not name who initially credentialed me, and I was all excited about it. Hey, I finally get credentialed for a film festival. And then they yanked the credential. And they yanked it because they said they didn't like how I wrote my reviews. And so I'm like, can you give me more, feedback? I welcome constructive feedback so I can try to fix or kind of see what you're talking about. And they wouldn't do it. So I'm kind of like, all right, well, I'm just going to put you over into this corner, and I'm going to keep doing what I do. And then, so this was before 2020 or 2021, when I started getting this film festival and this film festival, and then Tribeca came and some of these other ones. And there's a part of me still like, that film festival because of spite, but then at the same time, like I mentioned, I try to get away from that because I don't think it's healthy, and I want to get to where I'm motivating myself and hopefully getting people around me who are positive people, like who are right here right now, who are of a similar tribe.
Mark, you know the truth about that though, right? Like, you find out years later that the president of the festival or whatever, like, their nephew at last minute decided to come in, and they're like, oh, we're just going to make up an excuse and push him out. And it's just the name of the game. Like, now that I'm producing, it's so funny. It's like, we think it's about us, and then it's like, oh, they just wanted a redhead, like, not a blonde. And you're like, what? Like, it really just comes down to that. It's just so funny. So that's why I've learned to not take anything personally.
Yeah, well, and that's really good advice and a good reminder. So, because I just got rejected the other day. I'm kind of, well, that one's okay because they've explained what happened and all that kind of thing. And I can grow from that. But yeah, some of these other people, it's like, oh boy.
I love getting rejection is so comfortable for me. I'm like, oh, I didn't get the audition. Great, cool. And then when they actually tell me I got it, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm scared.
Oh my gosh. And I see, Crystal, thanks for joining us. I'm glad that you're here to actually join us a little while ago. Sorry, I just saw this now. And we have about 10 minutes roughly to kind of keep going. I'm just going to throw it out to all of you before I move on to something else. Is there anything else you'd like to ask your guests or something else you just want to throw out there based on what we're talking about? Just something from left to center? Is that a resounding no? Okay, well, I have something that I wanted. I'll tell you why this came up. I was looking at something online last night, not online, on my TV, and it's like, wow, I haven't watched that film in a while, and it was the same time last year. That's why the film came up in my head. It's an independent film. I am going to say what it is because I think it's wonderful. It's just such an underrated film, and so I started watching it, and this was like, I don't know, maybe like 11 o'clock last night, and I should have went to sleep. But I'm like watching, and the next thing I know, the movie's done. I'm like, what time is it? It's not 12:30 or whatever. Like, oh crap! But that just tells me like how good it still is. And so I'm wondering from all four of you, do you have something that you would recommend? Because I know during the holidays, when I want my downtime, on veg out day or veg out week or whatever it is, I tend to look for things to watch. And is there anything that's like a hidden gem or even something popular right now that you think, oh, if you have time in the next month, try to check this out? And I'll get to my film last, but could be a film, TV show, just something.
I just watched the Stutz documentary, and I was a huge fan of it. It's basically Jonah Hill's psychiatrist. He basically does a mini doc on him, and there were like 3 key points in there that he says. I'll let you watch it, but it has really simplified my process of digesting and working through things that come up when I like get triggered, and I'm like, wow, that's actually very effective. It's a really cool documentary.
Do you happen to remember what that was on? Oh.
It's on Netflix. It's called Stutz, Stutz.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I will plug Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah,
which I understood from the Daniels, who are I believe, writers and directors, two of them. I like when I was watching, some an interview with them, they were mentioning how, there's been this minimalist movement, and, a lot of how we even decorate our interiors or whatnot, minimalism, or how we dress or whatnot, even certain movies and whatnot. But they went for the opposite, maximalism, which I thought was like super, super fun. So if some of you haven't watched that yet, super recommend it. It's just it's an adventure.
I felt like I was tripping on acid the entire movie. I was like looking around the theater, like, am I the only one? I feel like I'm on ayahuasca right now. Yeah.
This time of year, I always watch Die Hard. It's actually like my favorite movie for some reason. Couldn't tell you why, but I think it's like funny and also like not funny at the same time. And I just watched Wednesday on Netflix. That was really good. Jenna Ortega. I will use any excuse to bring up Jenna Ortega. I think she's amazing, and I thought it was really good. But yeah.
So Dalby, you're in the camp that Die Hard is a Christmas film.
I am. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna miss. Okay. Yeah. I am in that camp. I think it is because it plays Christmas music. It's a Christmas party, Santa hats, Christmas trees, all the stuff. It's there. It's extreme Home Alone is how I see that movie. Like a very extreme Home Alone.
Interesting. I'm so old. I saw that in the theater when it came out. But no, that's great. And I've heard great things about Wednesday. I need to watch that. I haven't.
It is really good.
Okay, cool. And Miss Casey?
I'm going to say I am kind of a film nerd, and my two favorite films are in French, but my favorite film, and it was just named the greatest film of all time, and it is by a Belgian filmmaker, Chantal Akerman, and it's called Jean Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Brussels, filmed in Brussels, where she's from, and I geek out over it. It's about, all of her films have a very feminist touch. I mean, feminism, if you can call it, if you want to label it, I suppose, but it's about a woman who, and you're observing her in her home, you're observing her as she, has male guests over and then has her son over. And you're just sort of observing her in these moments of her life that can seem mundane, but seeing what's going on behind her eyes is also kind of fascinating as well. And so it was just named the greatest film of all time, which I love. And I think it was Sight and Sound magazine. I think that's what it's called. They do that. And it will hold that title now for a decade because they do it every 10 years. They have this list. And she had an all-female crew. That was important to her as well. And this was in the 60s, I think. It went to Cannes, won at Cannes. So yeah, I would recommend that movie, checking it out.
That's cool. What's the other movie that's your other favorite?
The other is Blue in the Three Color trilogy by Krzysztof Kieslowski.
Yeah.
If you've seen those, yeah. Those are my two favorite movies.
So good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And
I recommend both.
Okay, I'm writing all this down, and I see Crystal saying, "I love you, Casey." So you have a big fan in the chat.
I love you too.
And I will mention that the film that I was watching again last night, and that last year in December, I think January too. I must have watched it maybe 5 times. So I'm one of those people. When I find something I like, I will go back and kind of try to figure out what is it about this that's creating this emotion in me. And sometimes it might be a certain scene. So I used to drive my family nuts when I lived back at home. I mean, I would rewatch stuff. I was like, are you still watching that same scene over? Can't you watch something else? Or watch the whole movie from beginning to end? And a lot of times I couldn't. But in this case, it's called 7 Short Films About Our Marriage. And it came out last year, and it's on Amazon Prime if you have that. So it's free. There's no ads. You don't have to rent or buy it. So you could watch it tonight if you have access to Amazon video on your TV or your tablet or what have you. And it's shot by Professor Chris Hansen. And I thought, oh gosh, I got to make sure I get his university right. He's a professor at Baylor, I want to say, in Texas. And it basically, what I love about it for me, and I'm not an actor, but I love watching the 2 leads because he just lets them act. There's long shots. There's very few edits going on. It's almost like watching a play or something. And the 2 of them are so good together. And they're just kind of, instead of doing like one long movie, there's 7 chapters to that's where the title comes from. It just kind of shows how they got together. It's an interracial marriage, and kind of the trials and tribulations that they go through. But it's so good. And every time I watch it, I know something else different about it. And like nobody's heard of it. So you could watch it for free if you find yourself looking around for something to find. I highly recommend it. I have interviewed the professor and both leads last year, and I'm trying to see if I can get them back to kind of talk about it together as a group because I'm such a nerd for that film. I'm a nerd for all kinds of things, but I think that's also what kind of drives what I do. As I've mentioned during a lot of your one-on-one interviews, I'm the boss, so I can choose what I want to do and who I want to talk to. And if your stuff doesn't resonate with me, that's nothing against you. It just doesn't resonate with me, so I move on to people that I want to talk to. So like the lovely ladies here. Crystal, if you have any kind of questions, if you want to throw it in the chat real quick, because we are almost out of time. I think the 4 of you can kind of see how sometimes these things can just kind of go and go and go because we just kind of scratch the surface of things. And and if you drink or alcohol gets involved, get used to. And all of these are on every fun table session we did are on my YouTube channel, unedited, except for one, because I did have a couple guests that kind of tipped over the edge at one point in terms of their drinking. I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do them a favor and edit that part out. But the rest of it, so Christy Anna's that she was a part of with her significant other, who's also in the band and was a very talented person in his own right, is on some of those. But there's yet another thing I guess you could watch, shameless plug, if you're finding yourself bored. There's a bunch of other fun table sessions from the past 2 years.
How do we get our hands on the drunk footage? I want to see that.
I'll have to see if I still have that section. It was about a 20-minute section, and yeah, it was two guys in a band down in Texas that were just drinking beers. I should have kind of noticed, like, that's been like maybe a dozen or something.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave it to those silly Texans. They'll just.
Oh goodness.
I'm from Texas, so I can say that.
I'll be honest. I didn't really know what to do, so I'm like, should I take them out of the stream and talk to them privately, and then bring them back in? The other guys were being super nice and kind of looked like private thinking, Mark, are you going to say something to them? Are you going to do something? And then eventually they just kind of shut up. I think maybe they kind of went past the point of no return.
They just fell asleep. There's something so satisfying. It's like kind of messed up, but like someone just like going off the rails, and like it's just so mesmerizing to watch somebody just like totally fall off the tracks. I love it.
And that's the only one that I can think of that definitely happened. People are definitely buzzed, including myself, during some of those. But yeah, not to the point where you're like just speaking gibberish and you don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, I can't relate to any of that at all.
Well, that's good. Before we finish this up, actually, a question did come in from Crystal asking, what are all of your favorite horror movies?
Ooh.
This is my favorite genre, which is why Casey's movie was so interesting to me. I was watching the preview and I was like, oh, that's so fun. My favorite is Scream, the original. That's actually like one of my favorite movies. I love the whole franchise a lot. I think they're really funny. Like, the theme is, I think that serious, like, scary movies are really funny. And that's what I like look for in a scary movie. So Scream would be my favorite.
I'm gonna go with The Shining, but I have a horror film coming out next year, so you guys check it out. It's called 3 Days Rising, but I would say The Shining.
Cool. I would, if you like horror films that are scary but make you laugh, I would recommend Terrifier 2.
Okay.
It's very gory, but I would recommend it.
I literally will watch it right after this.
Oh, God. Okay.
Where is it, Keith? Where is it streaming?
It's streaming on Screambox, Amazon. I think it's on Apple TV.
Okay.
It's on a few places now. Yeah. Let me know but it's very gory, so if you need to look away, it's fine.
It'll be fine.
I would say my favorite horror film is I really like The Others. I really like ghost stories. I'm fascinated by ghosts. So like in real life. So I really liked The Others when I watched that.
I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite horror movie, but I really did enjoy The Haunting of Hill House TV series.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really good.
Cool. And I was going to add in, if you go to Amazon to look for, I think it's Amazon, to go look for Casey's Terrifier 2, Screenbox will have Sienna as the picture, whatever you want to call it, behind it. But if you go to the other version, it'll have Casey. I just saw that last night to kind of see, like, if I decide to watch it again through that streaming platform, which one do I guess? Oh, there's Casey right there. So there you go.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had people tell me that. They're like, you're on the banner on Amazon. I'm like, oh, well, hey. But yeah, it's true.
And I guess for my I'm like an old school horror fan. That's what I grew up with. Although I did, obviously, I really love Terrifier 2, and I like the first one too. But favorite, probably one that's not as well known is The Prince of Darkness from John Carpenter. Came out like in 86 or 87. And it's more creepy. It's not gory or over the top. And if you watch it like at midnight with the lights off kind of a thing, I watched it recently. It still holds up, and it still creeps me just the fuck out. I mean, there's something about that film, of how he directed it. Just kind of, it's supposed to be kind of the arrival of Satan in our world, and it just kind of got under my skin. And I remember I watched it like back in high school. I watched it in college. Watched it now as a grown adult. It still gives me that same feeling. So that would probably be in my top 5 for horror movies. And Crystal, of course, Terrifier 2 is her favorite horror film. So, but Dalby, Kelly, Casey, Christy, thank you so much for taking the time for being the guest of the 2022 Fun Table session. I'm so glad that the 4 of you could come together tonight and talk about various topics and speak your mind and kind of maybe have a little bit of connection with each other, even if it's only through social media or anything beyond that. I obviously wanted you here, and I'm so glad that you could come and make this a reality. And if I don't get a chance to see you in any other way, I hope that you have a really great happy holiday season, I should say. Perhaps a happy new year, because I don't know, that's not too far off either. But I have a feeling that probably, I would say in all of your cases, we're going to connect at some point down the road on either projects or something else that you have coming up. I would love to have you come back, and we'll kind of go from there. But again, thank you so much for taking the time. People in the chat, thank you for watching. Again, stay safe out there, and don't catch the bug that I have, whatever this crap is that I have right now. So hopefully that you stay well and enjoy your holiday season. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.